Okay, here's where deburring the block came in handy. I'm going to push these main bearings down into where they're supposed to be, and watch this surface right here. If I did it right, it should not shave it. No shaving. Haha. I don't see anything. So do the thrust bearing. No shaving. Oops. I'll edit that out, maybe. Okay, and the rear bearing. These little notches, line them up. This rear bearing has a seal in there for the oil pathway. That's an oil pathway right there. And it's covering up a hole for the oil pathway with the bearing. How do you know which bearing goes where? It's the grooves with the hole feed oil to the crank and then to the rods, and that goes into the block, and the smooth one goes into the cap. These bearings have the groove going 3/4 of the way around. I didn't know that when I ordered them. It's usually the better bearings, so cool. So you line up the notches with the deck and you push it in straight down. No shaving. That's where beveling the edge with the file comes in. So I got all the bearings in there. In the block anyway. I'm going to put them in the caps next. I think I'll do that off camera. Okay, before I put the bearings into the caps, I want to point a few things out. The surface the bearing gets pushed into has a crosshatch. That crosshatch helps hold the bearing in place, so you want to make sure it's dirt free and dry. It does have some kind of texture. When you clamp the cap into the block, it pushes against it and the texture grabs the outside of the bearing along with the little notch that the bearing sits into, that little notch right there. That helps hold the bearing in, and it tells which end goes where. Of course, when I put the cap on, they're numbered, and this notch goes on the same side as that notch. So when I put the crank down into it, I'm going to use some plastic gauge to see what the clearance is on one of the bearings before I pull it out and grease it up. That's the plan. And for those of you who don't know what plastic gauge is, it's pretty much a thin strip of wax. You break off a piece, you lay it on the bearing journal, you tighten down the bearing journal, and you pull it back apart to see how much this stuff is smashed. And then on the package it comes with thicknesses. You match up the thickness of how much it was smashed, and it tells you. That's how it works. So let's do a little demonstration. Break off a piece. So I got a little piece that's round, and then you take it, making sure the crank is dry. You lay it on there, no oil or grease on the crank. And then you put the cap on, you tighten it down. going to smash that wax piece. Okay. When I come back, I'll have the caps off and show you how to measure. Okay, I just got done tightening and loosening all the main caps, so I'm going to pry one off, and then we'll go get the plastic gauge to measure what the clearance is on these. See how much it's squished? I don't know if you can see it. There we go. And you just match it up to three thousandths. I'd say that's perfect. Okay, I'll do the rest off camera. That's how you measure. So this one measures at 3 thousandths, roughly. This one measures about 2 thousandths. This one's about 3 thousandths. Let's see. There you go. This one's about 3 thousandths. Well, between 2 and 3 thousandths. This still got a lot of miles on the motor. And those bearing surfaces was machined 100,000 miles ago. Those are not fresh machining journals, so motor's still got a lot of life in it. Okay, clean off that plastic gauge. All it is wax, but it'll come off. And then grease it up, drop the crank back in, and tighten it back up. You have to lube torque these bolts. Lube torque is putting 30 weight oil on the threads to torque them down. Okay, here's how I put the engine building grease on there. I just put it in the center, so when I push it down on there, it'll squish all the way around, and when you start spinning it, it'll go the rest of the way around. So okay, all the caps are on there, right? 1, 2, 3, and of course the back main one. Okay, to lube torque the bolt, I'm using the SAE 30 weight motor oil. Dip the threads in it. Put a little around the top for the head of the bolt. Just drop it in. Get a more accurate torque reading that way. Okay, to seat the cap, I run both of them all the way down until it touches the cap. The cap isn't seated into the block yet because of the clearances. It's pretty tight. You got to draw it down so both of the bolts are down even, so the cap is level. Quarter turn. Keep doing it till it seats. Bring it down even. That way you don't touch the bearing. Going in sideways to move the bearing where it's seated on the cap or in the block. You'll feel it when it touches bottom. Okay, that one's down, that one's down. Even up the torques by hand, and you move on to the next bolt. Okay, Next is torquing down the main caps. I'm going to do it in 3 steps. I'm going to do it in up to 30 and then 50, and then the final torque is 73. So this is going to be 30. This will even them all up from me doing it by hand. Freaking mosquito. Okay, torque wrench is set for 30. I don't know if you can see it. If we could zoom in. Buck gas. Here we go. If you can make out the 30, it's on the 0. So $30. Okay, they're all even. Now I could go up to 50 and then the 73. I'll do that off camera because I need both hands. Okay, I got the crank in. All the caps are torqued where they're supposed to be at 73. And I haven't spun the crank yet. Before I do that, take a look, see at what I did when I put the grease on the caps, why I did that a certain way. You can see it's covering from here to here. I haven't spun the crank yet, so there should be no grease in between here. I don't like getting grease or oil or anything in between there because it might create a little gap between the cap and the block. So when you tighten it down, it might not squish out, which is why I do it that way. I'm sure when I drop the bolts down in there, no oil got into that surface. So let's see if the thing will spin. Yes, it does. Haha. Pretty easy, I might add. So the crank is in. I gotta go pick up a rear main seal, a flywheel bolt, and start popping the pistons in. But yeah, it feels good. Okay. And yes, I moved the crank to where I set the end plate in the block. I did that part off camera too, so don't worry. If you like this sort of thing, rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks, man. Bye. Okay, here's a little bonus tip. I marked all the main bearing cap bolts with a line. Okay, see the line? Correspond with a line on the cap on all of them. All the caps are torqued down to where they need to be at 73 foot-pounds. In 2 days, I'm going to come back out here and I'm going to retorque them. I'm going to see if everything is settled into place or if the bolt actually loosened up by the cap being compressed and letting go. Okay, it's been actually 4 days since I torqued the caps. Me mentioning the lines on the bolts matching the caps with the marker, you could see. This demonstration is going to see if the caps did any kind of settling to where it loosened up the bolts. Normally everybody preaches that when you torque a bolt, it should be fine. It's not going to come loose, but the parts do settle. And that's what this is about. So take an overview of all the bolts. You can see the lines are all going this way, and they match up with the lines on the cap that I drew with the marker. So we'll start with the front of the engine and work our way back. Oh, I haven't touched the torque wrench either. It's still set at 73. I don't know if you can see it through the camera, but here we go. Should click without moving. It's moving. It moved just a little bit. Come over here. It did move. Okay. As you can see, it's lined up. Let's do this one. It moved just a hair. Haha. Knew I was right. Okay, let's verify this line. Put it on there. Yeah, that one didn't move. Go to the next one. Keep it from not tipping over. That moved just a hair. So this one moved a little bit, moved a little bit. That one did not move. That one moved just a hair. So on to the next one. You can see the line. I'll try to keep it straight. That one did not move. That one did not move. Okay. Now to the last ones. Let's see, verify it. Did not move. Did not move. So the back four didn't move, I think. This one didn't move. This moved a little bit. That moved enough to notice, and so did that one. So this cap came loose. Probably just 1 or 2 pounds, but it came loose. Okay, that's the end. Until the next part. Okay, I just got done putting the crankshaft in the engine, and the bonus footage. According to that, the front cap came loose. Probably about 2 or 3 pounds of torque it took to finish torquing the bolts, but it still would have ran. It would have been fine, but a lot of buts there. The bolts did come loose. That was the point of that, rechecking the torque on the bolts after a couple days, let the parts settle in. So, rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks a minute. Bye.